Hi, and welcome back to the channel. We've got a new interview today. The interviews seem to be becoming quite popular. We've got Roger Gerrish. Welcome, Roger.
Hi, James. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for agreeing to come on. I always get surprised when people actually want to come on the channel and be interviewed.
Well, quite often a lot of us like the sound of our own voices, so it's why not? Why not?
Yeah, I think as gamers we do tend to be a little bit egotistical, don't we? Sometimes.
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, that's in all my time. My wife just has never understood wargaming, never understood what it is I do, why the way I do it. I remember a couple of years ago when we were traveling back to down south, and I said, "Oh, there's a show on at East Midlands Airport that we're only going to be there for an hour and a half. I've never seen somebody so bored in my life." Just but look at that. No, it's just another, but hey, yeah, you're absolutely right.
I do know the feeling. Actually, we were driving across Scotland, and we said we'd stopped at almost everything. We'd stopped at Glencoe, we'd stopped at half a dozen places, and we said, right, before we hit Loch Ness, no more stops. Let's just get to the hotel. We're driving across. We got to Arachnakerry, and there's the Commando Memorial. I didn't say anything. She just looked across and went, "You can have a few minutes." I think we have very understanding partners. I think we ought to say thank you to them.
I think you're right. If we get time at the end of this, I shall tell you about my trip to Castle Air Force Museum in California, which my poor wife had to put up with, and that was just purely off chance. We just went past it, and I said, "Oh, look at that." Hours, but anyway.
That sounds about right. So, Roger, how did you get started in gaming?
Very tender age, about 11 or 12, I think it was. The school I was at had a war games club, and it so happened, I can't remember the names or whatever, but it so happened that one of the boys at the school, father was something in airfix, so he came back after half term one time, and he just came with these big boxes basically full of all the old airfix, HO scale plastics. There was Romans and Britons and cowboys and Indians and World War I and Marines and commandos, all that sort of stuff, and all the Napoleonics that were sort of coming out at that time. And we used to play with those, and that used to expand on them. We'd find the airfix tank kits as well, so we start putting those things together. Can't remember any of them being painted. And at that time, I think it was, we generally just played our own games based on rolling dice. I think the first one we had was this one.
Yes, I remember that.
Charles Grant Battle. Brilliant. Still good. I really want to play it again sometime, but I suppose this thing got me most interested for the first time in tanks. So yeah, we used to play that a lot, and then that was in Scarborough, but then I moved to Nottingham, which I understand now, of course, is the centre of one of the big centres of wargaming, and I saw an advert in Airfix magazine for Donald F. Featherstone's Tank Battles in Miniature Western Desert, and at the same time, that was just the time when the first of the micro tanks were appearing, so the 1.100 scale stuff, and I think it was like Leicester Micro Models, I think was the company that used to make them. So back in those days, it was a one-piece tank, turret was molded on, and your barrel was a pin. But I was able to buy loads of those. I hadn't got any friends because I just moved to a new city, so I got this. I got some Germans, I got some British, and used to play this stuff. And then at school, I found a couple of people who were sort of interested in this sort of wargaming type thing, and we used to play huge tank battles on the carpet usually, sometimes outside. And then I found there was a war games club in Nottingham. Used to meet at a pub called the Generous Britain on Mansfield Road back in the 70s. And that's, of course, we got to meet a few of the people who sort of got bigger in the industry later on. And we played all sorts of stuff there, and that was war games research group stuff, like, you know, their old World War II and their sort of modern sets of rules. Used to play those. Played some club matches as well. So yeah, so that's where it was. At this Generous Britain is where I sort of started wargaming properly. I then got sort of sucked across into role play, so my usual period of, you know, D&D, Traveller, stuff like that. And then I guess it was just that I knew a few of the people who were involved in Games Workshop to start off with, so Jervis Johnson, Rick Priestley, people like that, who, you know, I'd gamed with, and of course everything took off with them. So I spent a long time sort of dabbling around on the sort of the fantasy sci-fi side of things. Well, I'm a bit of a science fiction buff myself anyway, so that was quite good. So and then, yeah, I mean, then it's just really been club gaming. Getting involved with Games Workshop, got involved in a lot of play testing with, wrote a couple of articles in White Dwarf a long time ago. Met Andy Chambers. I've done a lot of play testing for Andy over the past, you know, over the past 20, 30 years or so. And I suppose that's the thing that eventually sort of kicked me in the direction at some point of time, you know, instead of just writing all these rules and stuff for us to play at the club, you know, try and see if we can do something, you know, a little bit more commercial. So yeah, so it's been 50 years. That's it. I'm 62, and it was about age of 10, 11, I think, the first time that we were pushing Airfix things around. So yeah, I think I'm a 50-year veteran of the damn thing.
That's impressive. Do you still get much chance to game, or?
Oh God, yeah. Well. Yeah.
Excluding COVID.
Yeah, excluding COVID. Yeah. No, there's War Games Club in Nottingham. We used to meet at the Rose and Crown pub, and yeah, every Thursday night. So without fail, well, generally without fail, we would go along there and game. So yeah, I'm hoping once everything's, well, if and when it settles down, I'm not sure it's ever going to recover in some respects, but I've had my first few games with people, you know, we've been very careful, and so more to get back to. I've really missed it. I've very much missed the social side of wargaming as well. Very, very much. It's been quite hard, that. But yeah, I do. If all things being equal, I would be, you know, gaming every week, I would say.
Well, you never know. We might be back to it shortly, and you never know. With me just being just north of you, I might have popped down to Nottingham.
Absolutely, and vice versa, you know, because I mean, I've seen all the stuff that's come across from, you know, like a stone wall and things like that. I mean, you know, I need to expand my horizons a little bit, I think. So yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So I mean, you've mentioned sort of doing stuff in White Dwarf. I've got to ask you which ones, because my White Dwarf collection goes back to issue 40. I'll be fascinated to see what you did.
It's in the hundreds. It was basically around. This would have been back in about 85, probably 85, 86. Yeah. Sort of in that period of time. I got involved. We used to have a little club. We used to make a place called in the Meadows, a little social centre. And one of the people who used to come along there was Jervis Johnson.
Yeah.
And he was just doing the very first version of Adeptus Titanicus at the time. So we play tested Adeptus Titanicus, and I think we actually named the damn things Titans when one of these sessions. We were going to be called Leviathans. So I got to talking to Jervis, and Jervis went on a sabbatical, and Andy Chambers came in at that time, and Robin Dews, who was the editor of White Dwarf at that time, asked if I would care to just write a couple of Space Marine epic Space Marine type stuff. So I and a colleague we did some work on the original vehicles. I then co-wrote an article with Andy Chambers on Titans when they first introduced all the different weapon choices and things like that, and then something on Epic Imperial Guard or whatever. So yeah, so it'd be back in the back in about 85, 86. So
Yeah.
I look under the table. I'm pretty sure I can't get to it at the moment, but I've got some of the white dwarfs down there. But I'll let you know ones. But yeah, they're a little odd.
I actually can remember the articles, which is quite nice.
I know.
So yeah. So what other products have you been involved with? I believe you've had some action involvement with Bolt Action as well.
Yeah, I've written two campaign books for Bolt Action. Well, the second one, the Western Desert one, I wrote in concert with my good buddy Mike Bradford. But the first one, Road to Berlin, and that's the very first. I tell you what happened was, I knew Wayne Bollins a lot, and he was the sub-editor at Wargames Illustrated. So once he became sub-editor, he was looking for people to write articles. So I started writing articles for Wargames Illustrated, and one of those, I think, was on pulp stuff, my first one that I actually did. And then I wrote a lot of stuff on sort of modern warfare. And it was Andy Chambers at the time said, I bet you could write stuff if you wanted to. Do you mind if I recommend you to Paul Sawyer at Warlord and see if you're interested in doing anything? So Paul Sawyer came back to me, and then I had to write a little sort of a test thing for them, which was basically I did a sort of a 1945 Operation Unthinkable type thing, you know, Patton's Dream sort of thing. And I also wrote up an article on the mouse for them. And so they said, oh, do you want to write this? So this thing came along, which was basically covering the war on the Eastern Front from Operation Bagration until basically the fall of Berlin. So that was my first proper published thing. They then asked me, for God knows what reason, but they asked me to do another one. And as I say, I wrote with Mike Bradford, I wrote the Western Desert one. Then, because I'd helped out with the Doctor Who Exterminate game, and again, Andy Chambers had just written the Strontium Dog elements, but he was really busy and they wanted someone to write the Judge Dredd one. So they said, oh, you like science fiction and comics and stuff like that? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, do you want to write the Judge Dredd one? And so, you know, working with Andy, but basically adapting his existing combat systems, but adding all the stuff related to Judge Dredd around it. That Judge Dredd came out a couple of years back. And then almost at the same time, that's when the first inklings of 7 Days to the River Rhine came along, because as well as knowing the people at Warlord, I also was very friendly or knew the people who ran Great Escape Games, Mark Wheatley and Mr. McCorkadale, and I did a little bit of play testing with them on stuff, picked up Iron Cross. In fact, Iron Cross, I was asked to write an article for Wargames Illustrated of 2 new games that had come out. There was Iron Cross, and there was Battle Group, Warwick Kinraid's Battle Group, Western Desert, and we did a comparison thing. So we played a game of Iron Cross, and we played a game of Battle Group, and you know, I sort of wrote a comparative article on them. And I thought, oh, this Iron Cross is quite good, this. And I'd had a few dallyings with 15mm modern because of Battlefront bringing out the Team Yankee, but I never really enjoyed Team Yankee. No disrespect to the game or anything like that, but I used to hate the tank park effect of too many tanks, and everything looked like it was a sort of a Warhammer 40k table in some respects. And so I liked Iron Cross, and I just was talking to them and saying, you know, God, it would be a good idea. You know, bet we could adapt this to, you know, to modern day combat. You know, sort of a Cold War goes hot type thing. I said, oh well, you know, we could try it out. So I wrote some very simple adaptations to that, and then I took it along to the club and we played it. And it was in a very basic form at that time. Mark Wheatley said, "Oh, quite like that." And then out of the blue, he says, "Right, I'll commission you. Go and write a modern day version of it." I says, "Oh, all right then." And you know, he was a joy to work with, absolute joy to work with. You know, very receptive, very very respectful of, you know, the amount of effort and work that you put into these sort of things. Went out of his way to accommodate me on, you know, advice and guidance, and bringing in other play testers, and just generally encouraging me. So yeah, so it developed from there, and we really heavily played. We played it, and I realized we're probably onto something, because people sort of enjoyed it, people liked it. It was and you know, it was a developing process. You know, the way the order chits worked and things like that. You know, so much of it obviously is ported from Iron Cross. I mean, I just basically gilding the lily in a lot of respects. So there were certain things I thought that weren't in Iron Cross. You know, there's the way you spot, certain elements of movement, cover, and things like that weren't really covered in Iron Cross that I thought should be. So I said, "Do you mind me messing around and adding these bits?" And no problem at all. You do that. So we added those little bits in there, and then we were sitting around one day and thinking we would like to bring a little bit more, something else, some sort of flavour into it. And you know, we'd seen other games. Well, actually, we worked on a game, Mike and I, a few years ago, where you know, there was a lot of card play in it, where you could bring in random elements. You know, whether it would be a, you know, random airstrike, or a bit of smoke would blow across the battlefield, or you know, something might happen. You know, your commander's got gastroenteritis or something like that. But we suddenly thought, well, let's put something in there. So we came up with this grandiose idea of the tactical advantage cards. So we thought, oh, let's just write some stuff in this and see how it works. Not a big part to start off with, but we tried it and people liked it, and you know, so it sort of developed from that. So it was really just so much adding these additional rules in there where necessary, putting the tactical advantage cards in there, and then trying to, the best you could, sort of say, well, okay, what's different about modern day tank combat compared to World War II? How would the vehicles work in that game, without, and how do you make it, how do you try and balance it so that, you know, it's not the usual sort of, I mean, I used to play things like Combined Arms and some of the other Frank Chadwick early games and things like that, where, you know, the gods of the battlefield being the NATO tanks and that sort of stuff, and just try to sort of think, well, you know, how can we make this interesting for both sides? And it was just really trial and error, and we just play tested it, and you know, enjoyed the games. And you know, what you get now is sort of it was the result of that. It was you know, we put it out to other groups, and they seemed to quite like it. And we were just waiting for somebody to come back and say, no, that doesn't work, or that, you know, wrong. But they didn't. And as such, and since it's been out, it's sold quite well, actually. And really, yeah, we've had lots of constructive criticism from people, which is something I absolutely want. But we've had nobody. It's the nature of the group and the people, I think, who actually play it. You know, I've never come across such a nice bunch of people in some respects. You know, there's, you know, nobody trolling us, nobody just picking it apart for the sake of picking it apart, or whatever. So, you know, I'm very happy. I'm very happy with what happened. It's the most enjoyable aspect of my professional part of wargaming, I would say.
I like it. I mean, you've got every right to be proud of it. I know it's, I mean, I love the system. I've got to be honest. There's tweaks that I'd make, and you know, you know, but it works. That it's simple. That's what I like. Now, it's almost tying into the next question I've got written down here, which is, which of the things that you've been involved with are you most proud of?
That to tell you the truth, 7 days for me.
Yeah.
Simply because of the reaction. And yeah, there's a bit of ego stroking when people say, oh, this is great, and I'm playing this and I'm doing that. But at the same time, when I see so many posts coming, there's people like, suddenly it'd be like someone in Spain or somebody in Australia or somebody elsewhere, and I'm thinking, my God, they're picking up and playing this game that I worked on. This is it's brilliant. And whereas things like Dredd and to a certain extent Warlord, the Wall Bolt action, there's an extremely vocal and to a certain extent, I have to say, quite toxic environment sometimes. The trolling side, oh, no, I would have done it this way, oh, this doesn't work and you shouldn't have done it like that, and blah blah blah, and Warlord don't do this and Warlord do that. And to me it would be like I would absolutely hate going onto any social media or stuff that was sort of discussing some of these things, because I just get annoyed and upset, because it's like, the criticize, people sort of say, oh, it's just a job, you're just getting paid for it, just producing something. But at the same time, when you put a lot of effort into something, then somebody just comes up and says, for whatever reason, sometimes a valid reason, but quite often not, that, oh, that's rubbish, or you're an idiot, or something like that. It's quite upsetting. So, when 7 Days first came out, I was sort of thinking, oh my God, people are just going to say this is rubbish, this why did you do it this way? This is just terrible. And that didn't happen. And that was the nice part about it. I thought at first, well, it's just nice people talking to me, and the real people out there you'll hear from. But we didn't do. And so 7 Days for me was a joy to do. It was a joy to put it together. It was a joy to test it. It was a good joy to write it up. And it's been a joy to watch other people enjoying it and being so vocal about and being constructive. Many times, I can look at something and think, why in God's name did I do it that way? Or why didn't I think of doing that something a little bit different? And I think you always do that with stuff. But people have come back and reflected on that, and people kind of, well, maybe you should have done it like this, or maybe you should have done it like that. And I thought, oh God, yeah, right. That would have been a better way of doing it. And I write all this stuff down, and I've kept all this stuff. So when and if we ever get the opportunity to take it further, we can apply that stuff. But yeah, so 7 Days, 100% is the thing I've been most proud of.
I had a feeling you were going to say that from the way you've been talking about it. I mean, you sort of touched on something there. Are there any plans for a second edition?
Well, Great Escape Games are a tiny company. Very, very, very innovative, very, very productive company, produce some really good things. I mean, at the moment, I think they're bringing out concentrate on, get back onto their Dead Man's Hand cowboy games. So, they're bringing out some plastic cowboys, which are brilliant. I think they've been impressed with the way 7 Days is sold. So I think, at some point they will. But what might happen is it could be that it would be Iron Cross that would, because Iron Cross is the old system, and I think there's a sort of view that we could adapt a lot of the stuff that we've done for 7 Days. We can port across to Iron Cross, and cross fertilization between the two systems in some respects. So I think it's a possibility, especially as Great Escape also do a lot of World War II miniatures themselves. That possibly that might be the fit. I mean, I can't say for sure, because again, I've not really, because of what's happened over the past year or so, not really had the time to sort of sit down and talk to them and sort of say, let's take it further. But I'm absolutely sure that whether it be as a Iron Cross or a 7 Days, we could and we should see something. But I absolutely have no idea when that might be.
No, that makes sense. I know that everybody's sort of because I've asked around various people and go, have you got any questions for Roger? And that was the one that was the big one, I think, from an awful lot of people. So I mean, do you get much chance to actually game 7 days now? Now it's been out for a couple of years, or have you moved on to some other things?
Yeah, I do. I'm able to do. Yeah, we play it quite often. We did a lot of playing around the time when I put out the Arab Israeli stuff.
Yeah.
And to be perfectly fair as well, the chip system means that it works quite well from a solitaire perspective. So, you know, over the past 18 months or so, I've played a few games myself because I've got tons of these 50mm tanks lying around. And now that I'm into 3D printing as well, I'm printing up more of the stuff. Yeah. So yeah, I've played a bit, been thinking ideas about things that could be changed, things that could be tidied up, things that could be written in a way that's a little bit more bit more logical, because there are, if anything, my criticism of the rule book itself is that if we had a little bit longer time to spend on it, I think we might have rephrased a few things a little bit differently. But I think it's one of those things that you have when you play a game and you know a game really well, and you get to a point sort of when you get to a situation where you don't really need to look at the rules, and 7 days is one of those that it gets close to that. You can take so many things for granted. Your interpretation of something can be, well, in your head, clear. But for somebody who picks it up for the first time, or somebody reads it, they haven't got that same knowledge. And I find that in so many sets of rules that are written by people who then have their play testers around them, and they play tested this into the ground, that you're getting a good system out of it, but at the same time the writers, and that includes me, take certain things for granted. We don't actually sort of think, well, hang on a minute, yeah, I know that, and instinctively, I know that it works that way. Some of the, some new punters won't do that, won't be able to do that. Either because they just don't get it initially, or I've written it poorly, so it's not that clear. So yeah, I think that's the one thing that if I had my time over again on it, I would spend. If we had more time, I would have spent more time on saying, well, okay, like, is there any better way we can lay out the rules? Is there any better way we can explain them? In any better way we can use our examples? I mean, I think we did quite a good job by putting those little barcode examples on there, even though if one of them I think was at least wrong. Completely wrong. I think we tried, but I think we can do better, and that's the thing, because I want people to enjoy it, and I don't want people to be sort of like agonizing about whether they're playing it the right way, or should they play it rules as written versus rules as intended. It's one of those things. But yeah, so that's what I would have done. The other thing that I am most unhappy about, because it's not unhappy about, but something I'm uncomfortable with, is points values. I hate points values. I've never liked points values. I've never really got them. Never really got them. And I know that when I was looking at vehicles and types and things in 7 days, you start off with your own impression based upon all the various things you've read over the years about, well, this can do this and that can do that, and it's not necessarily what's in the brochure, but and you have preconception as well. I mean, we've always, so many of our war games have had that preconception about, the fantastic technological brilliance of NATO, oh, the Russians, terrible, this sort of stuff. And, watching the results of what happened in the Middle East as being, in Afghanistan, as being an example of, just how terrible the Russian tactics or Russian equipment would be. But to try and get rid of that and just, so I guess I would look at a tank and say, well, I think, an M1 is up there. Something else is a little bit better or a little bit worse. So it's finding a middle ground. I think it was something like around about the T72. I think was the sort of thing that we said, okay, let's make this the sort of the middle, and then we'll say, well, is this better than a T72? Is that worse than a T72? And sort of build it like that, and then thinking, oh God, now you've got to think about APCs now, and now I think, well, what's the what the APC? Well, or maybe the BMP1 or something like that. And so stat-wise, except for the misprints, which we had on some of the breakpoint things and some of the points values, stat-wise, I was happy because in a lot of respects, how I started things. It was an informed judgment of how I felt things ought to work, and I guess that's what you do when you write a game. You know, this is how I think it should happen, and this is the way I would envision it happening. So the vehicles and everything and the stats and things were just basically my interpretation of this. I would go to my Ospreys, I'd go to various other books and things like that and try and find information, but mostly try and look at battle reports and things like that. But that's one of the problems with the modern day stuff, is that you don't have that. You got tons and tons and tons and tons of stuff on World War II equipment to know exactly how it sort of performed. But you know, beyond some of the really sort of unbalanced engagements that took place in the, you know, in the later parts of the 20th century, it's difficult to tell. And learning all the time, because people like yourself were coming back with interesting anecdotes, interesting points about vehicles and equipment that made me think, oh right, yeah, I probably got this wrong actually. It should be done a little differently from that. And I've been like very impressed with the sort of stuff that you've been doing.
Well, thank you.
I'm not being as, but I'm not probably not being as, no, it's okay. I've not been as vocal as maybe as I should be, and I've also got a very soft spot for what you've done, because you've got Twilight 2000 in there, and I used to spend a lot of time role playing Twilight 2000. So it's good. But so there's things like, you know, some of the stuff you put in there for, you know, the bigger APCs and bigger crews and bigger complements of infantry, you know, split teams and things like that. That, you know, if and when we do get towards version 2, or if it's going to be like a PDF 1.5 or something like that, I'm going to be talking to you about nicking some of your stuff for certain, you know, because I think it would fit in nice, you know, and that's what I like is people who like a game, like the game enough to actually think about it, to actually put a bit of work into it, to actually, you know, do that research. That's fantastic. It's brilliant, and I really ought to be a bit more vocal on people doing that sort of stuff. But perhaps I'm not. But I very much I really appreciate all the comments that come in, what people say, and you know, some of the stuff is stunningly good. It's great.
Complete with the odd little in jokes in there if you look carefully enough.
Oh God, yeah. No, I like it. I spend, you know, the TAC adventure cards and things like that. Some of the stuff in there, brilliant. It's brilliant, and that's another thing. It's sort of that humour type thing. You know, I was thinking about that when we're doing the Arab-Israeli one, and you know, the whole idea that, you know, get bitten by an insect or something nasty appears in the trench, something like that, and completely throws you out, or there's a, you know, you get dazzled by a boat, you know, glass from a broken bottle or something like that. So yeah, no, I very much appreciate that sort of stuff. It's all noted. It's all noted. I won't go away and just nick it all. I will make sure it gets paid. But there's a lot. There is stuff. There's stuff that I've been thinking of, and some of my colleagues have been thinking of, and stuff that you guys have been putting together. And I think, you know, I want to do a second edition because I think we can make it even better. Never betray the simplicity side of things, because I think one of the nice things about it is it's a game that's quite easy to pick up. In a lot of respects, it's quite simple, but it's quite elegant. And I've never want to lose that, because I've seen so many games that start off well and very enjoyable to play, and then by the time a second edition comes out, people have built so much stuff on top of it that you lose what made the game good in the first place. People just get, you know, people get over obsessive about it, and I never want that to happen. But we just want to make it better. That's all. Build on its strengths. Build on its strengths. That's what I would say.
And I think that comes across in the Facebook group, the sheer way that everybody is positive about it and wants to contribute, which I think is fantastic.
yeah, 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 yeah. And I'll never ever. I might say, well, I didn't do it that way because, but I don't think I've ever have, and I never ever will shoot somebody down for saying something, because I consider their opinions to be easily as valid as my own. And especially from, and there's a lot of people out there as well. I mean, especially I get completely you know, some of the ex-servicemen out there, and some of the, you know, like I say, there's so many people out there with who get involved with military experience and come back with the anecdotes and things, and I'm just like saying, whoa, yeah. I mean, what do I know? Yeah, I was in the Cold War, but I was a frontline civilian, you know, 4 minutes away from nuclear annihilation, but that's as far as it got. You know, I didn't know in 1983 that I was nearly fried, but you know, it's so that again, it's quite humbling sometimes to when you think there's these people, you know, who were there, and you know, who would have been, you know, people who would have been part of this, you know, the horror that had, you know, something really gone off on them, you know, in Germany, it would have been, oh, awful. But yeah, no, I will always listen to what people have got to say, because quite often they know far more than I do. They've probably got far better ideas than I've got. And if I can fold those into, if I can help fold those into making the game better, then that's good. I don't feel on my own on this one. I feel I could go out to people and just say, you know, tell us more, and it would come in, and we would have a fantastic playtest as well.
Yeah, it does feel that way in the group, that you can just ask advice. And I mean, I've had an awful lot of feedback on things I've put on there, which I really appreciate.
Yeah.
You're right, it is one of the most polite and nice gaming communities that I've actually ever been in. Complete with a warped sense of humour in there as well, which is always nice.
Oh, it is, because you need, in this day and this day as it is at the moment, you know, the world is at the moment, you need a little bit of that. I spend so much time being utterly appalled by what I see on social media, and hearing some of what's reported on social media, and seeing how toxic so many of these conversations and groups can be. And then I can just sit back and say, well, you know, I can see, you've got new posts on 7 Days to River Rhine. Okay, I'm going to have a look. I never go in there thinking, oh, God, what am I going to see? You know, generally, it's going to be good. It's going to be nice. So, and it hasn't sort of died down either. It's kept fairly, you know, so it's alive, and people are playing it and carrying on playing it. And it's been nice to see, you know, your reports and the reports have been coming in from other people of playing the game, and I keep thinking, oh, I've got to get my finger out and get involved in this, but I've got so many other things going on in sort of the background, real work, personal life things, helping Andy out on Blood Red Skies and other projects and things like that. I do a lot of sort of like freelancey type stuff for people like Warlord and stuff like that, just little bits and pieces, you know, just doing bits of editing for them, bits of stuff like that. But I do need to get around a bit more focus back on 7 Days. Certain.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was very impressed when you brought out the 1973 supplement. That was quite. I've got to be honest. We had great fun backdating it slightly to 67, and then just looking at some of the kit, going, "You're using what?"
Exactly. Yeah. I know. I mean, I would like to do. The areas I'd like to look at. I know there's a definite interest in Iran, Iraq, but I just don't really know enough about that, and so really I probably ought to be looking at other people to probably. I mean, it's one of those things. It's quite hard as well to get some materials on that. Whereas, you know, there's so much stuff that's been written on the Arab-Israeli war itself, the wars itself. So yeah, and 67, I was sort of thinking, oh, we should include 67, you know, 67, 73, but it was, but I thought, no, 73 is different. It's, you know, let's concentrate on 73 as a separate thing on its own, because, you know, the introduction, you know, the use of the sagas and and other technologies that were coming in at that particular point of time, and don't try and bite off more than you can chew by doing the whole thing. So yeah, go back to 67, back into your T30, with T34s, T34 100s and ISU 152s and all the stuff in there, and all the incredible stuff that's sort of put together on the fly, and the World War II equipment that's out there. So yeah, I'd like to do that. I'd also like to do something sort of like a Cold War, sort of something like that might have happened if had things gone really bad in Korea, and there'd been a war in Europe in say 1954, 1955. So the T-54s and the like are just coming in. You've got M46s, M47s, and things like that on the other side. Charioteers and stuff. So that would be quite nice to do as well. I think personally that's what I'd like to do. I'm not sure about taking it in the opposite direction of going beyond 1984 into the 90s, because it's such a, well, again, I would sort of think maybe that's something for somebody else to have a play with, because it's overwhelming, the amount of information that's out there, and the brochure stuff on the self-defense systems on vehicles now, active defenses, passive defenses, the way the tank has changed, the way the battles have changed, that we're no longer dealing with battlefields across North German plains or big desert things. It's all asynchronous type, not asynchronous, what is it?
Asymmetric.
Asymmetric. That's, you got it. Yeah, asymmetric warfare, which is quite hard to, which is quite. And I also, to a certain extent, have a slight problem sometimes with gaming out stuff that's potentially actually happening.
Yeah.
Where you actually get to see the nasty side of what goes on that thing, beyond all, beyond the technology, beyond, this tank can do this, or this vehicle, or this weapon, or this gun can do that. So I suppose that's one of the nicest things about the about Cold War Goes Hot, in the, yes, all right, millions and millions and millions of people are going to die if it had happened, but it didn't. And you can sort of, game these sort of, you can game those sort of sessions out with a little bit safety, I think.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. So
yeah. I think possibly with that as well. I know when you originally designed the game, you wanted game based around tanks, and I think as warfare's got more modern, the emphasis has moved more onto the infantry. Now, I come to it from the opposite side. I've spent 29 years in the Army Cadet Force, and I've badged to an infantry unit. I have been the entire time. So I tend to look at it more from the infantry. My lists probably tend to reflect that quite heavily. Yeah. So for me, it's far easier to extend that way, I think.
No, I think you're probably right there. I mean, and that's one of the things as well that I won't say it's inadvertently, but yeah, certainly it was originally 7 Days to River Rhine was all about putting a lot of plastic tanks on the table. I got all this stuff that I've collected for playing Team Yankee. Yeah, I don't really want to play Team Yankee anymore, but I want to use this stuff. I enjoy it. I paint it. So, but the infantry just sort of like almost by accident, by being very simple in some respects, actually came out as much more important and much more influence on the games than I expected them to do. It was probably more by accident than any sort of good judgment on that. And they probably need a little bit, they would benefit from a little bit more love, I think, for certain. At the moment, I think they're workable. I think they fit in well. They are a decent. They can hold their own. They do what I think infantry are sort of supposed to do in the modern day battlefield. But I just feel that maybe we could you know, we could do a few things. Again, not letting ourselves get buried or building on layers that's going to actually mean you lose sight of the simplicity and the flow of the game. But just often it can just be tiny little tweaks. Just little tweaks is enough and can do things. So yeah. So again, I'd be very interested in you know, more feedback on you know, what you could do with infantry. You know, just like people to just tell me what they think. You know, what they think we should do. What do they think makes it different? What do they, when, especially with people, or especially as well, people who've played the game, is ideas that come out of playing the game. We can all sit back with a set of rules, not play it, and then just say, oh well, you should do it like this, or maybe do that, or do this part of it. But you know, I think where you learn is when you play the thing, and it's then that you can see where there are strengths, see where there are weaknesses, see where there's places you think, oh well, actually that doesn't quite work as well as it could do. Little tweak there, and it'll fit in much better. So yeah, I mean, you know, experience, you know, people, I read when they're there, I read, you know, I avidly read any battle reports and things like that, because I like to see how the game has flowed. And you know, we would do that a lot when we play testing. You know, we record a lot, write down a lot, this happened, that happened, and hopefully, you know, when we look back on it, we could say, well, that worked and that didn't work, so let's make a change to it. And I've not had that sort of chance to do that for probably 18 months or so. So, you know, bit more feedback coming in will be I invite it, and you know, and never be afraid of saying, well, by the way, that's rubbish, or that doesn't work, or something like this, because I don't care, I don't mind. I'm always in for people's opinions and ideas on things.
I think the nice thing is the respect's been going both ways, which always helps. I've got to be honest, when I've done my battle reports, though, my big problem has been I've been too busy to pick the camera up to take the photo because I've been enjoying the game that much. And the turn sequence doesn't help with that. I think what I need to do is to step back out of the game and just sit there and do the photos on a few battles.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely you know, it's a definite feel from a strict sequence of play, and I go, you go. It's very, that's one of the nice things about it, I suppose, is the dynamic aspect of things can change so quickly, and the initiative can change around so much. And you're absolutely right. When there isn't that sort of, you know, I go, you go, step A, step B, step C thing, it's actually, you're right, absolutely makes it very, very difficult to record what's going on, because it's like it's like an ongoing event. It's changing all the time, and you're invested in it as well. You have to think it. You have to think it through.
Yeah, it does remind me of the Duke of Wellington's comment about trying to record a ball. It has that sort of effect to it. But what we did find interesting, the comment that came from a number of players in the Stonewall group was, hey, I'm not thinking like a gamer, I'm thinking like a commander. And that was quite a shock to some of us. We also sort of commented as well that, I mean, I'm fairly new to the group, but they were saying on previous games, they've always been very much, okay, we've, you know, it's our turn to start, and they'll be chatting about what they've been doing during the week. That chat has been absent once the game starts.
Yeah. No, you can. It's very easy to be in a good position, and suddenly things, you know, if certain things can happen and things can change so quickly, and you can suddenly find yourself completely on the back foot. One minute you're thinking, oh, I'm in quite a comfortable position here, and the next minute something happens, and you're not, and it's just oh my god, I've got to react. It sort of falls apart. I think one of the things, it's funny when you're saying it, actually, one of the things, and I also ran into the same problem with Judge Dredd, is that, and especially when you've got something where you've got like NATO, which operates small numbers with as the way we've written it, you know, the NATO kit is good, it costs a bit, is probably, and I think you guys have touched on it a couple of times, and I think you've also tried to address it with things like subordinate commanders and things like that, is that when you work on a game where you get a command sheet based upon unit numbers necessarily, rather than say unit value, if you might say. You will get that sort of situation where somebody with a lot of low value units is going to be absolutely inundated with command chits, and you with your fantastic stuff run out very, very quickly. And the clever, Warsaw Pack player will, make you react and make you, give you the initiative and make you play your command points to a point where at the end of it you can have a situation where you've got nothing, you can't do anything. So one thing going forward, and maybe it would be subordinate units or something like that, I'd like to find probably a better way of allocating command points or command chits to a side, rather than it just being on a unit count basis. That would be something that I would like to see how that works. So I had the same thing happen in Judge Dredd, where you get, I mean, there's more based upon the mix of figures that they told me that was going to be into it. So you got a couple of really, tough judges, and you've got a lot of, and a bunch of, of gangster types who aren't very good. But the way Andy has written the system, everybody gets a chit. So you could have, your judges who are brilliant, but they only got a chance to sort of do something once, and they would just get swamped. And which might be realistic to a certain extent, but there needed to be some sort of level of balance in there. And I'd like to sort of think, that's one of the things I'd like to really better understand is that a problem with the game as it stands at the moment of 7 days, that you can get, NATO will get too quickly, will run out of, can be forced to run out of command chits too quickly. And basically then the Soviets can do what the heck they want. I don't know. I haven't seen, it's not been as bad as I saw it in Judge Dredd. And in some respects, yeah, NATO, high quality, but less chance to do things. I sort of think there still needs to be some sort of potential bonus maybe for NATO or something, to maybe sometimes give them a few more chits. I might be wrong, but I've noticed that in a couple of games that I've played, that I sometimes felt that I've shortchanged NATO a little bit on that side of things.
Yeah, someone who's played British through a full campaign, yeah, give me some more command points. That would be my argument.
Yeah, no, yeah. There's nothing worse than having this wonderful force there. I actually physically can't do anything with it. And that's one of the things I'll look at.
Again, it's not earth-shattering. It's a tweak, isn't it?
Yeah. But it also brings you back to, sorry, I can't stop talking. It also brings you back to the points value things as well. And I again, well, the guys on Iron Cross developed this most amazing, I tell you, amazing array-based spreadsheet to work their points out for Iron Cross. Now, we introduced different things into things like into 7 days, like for instance, different chances of hitting and things like that based upon the the quality of the units and things like that. Another change. So it broke that. So I had to use a sort of a version of that, and it wasn't quite as right. What I really should have done was just to my age-old idea is that you find the middle of your thing and you say that costs that amount of points, and how much better is this than that? 10% better, so it gets 10% more points, or in my opinion, it's 10% worse, so it gets 10% less points, something like that. That's one other thing I would probably do, because that was so funny. That was the thing I was most worried about. As much as anything, people are going to look at points values and say, "Oh God, that's all wrong," and that's worth far more than this, and you've unbalanced it. And a lot of people sort of came back initially and said, "Oh yeah, points values are really good. They work out well, good balance and things like that." And I was shocked, because but maybe we got it close there. So a few tweaks maybe on the point systems as well. And again, that can only really come from decent play testing, where you've got something, and you only by playing a unit several times in a game, several games, that you can actually sort of see the value of it. So I think points are one of those. Every designer I've talked to on points, they all hate them. They all can't stand them. But it's a thing that you have to have now in games. You have to have points in games. It's just one of those things. Tournaments.
Yeah,
I'm rubbish at tournaments.
Yeah, They are useful to have as a guide. I've got to be honest. I rather scenarios rather than anything else. And I mean, I've been playing it a lot solo, and I've just been trying different things out. I mean, we are playing around with a couple of different ideas for the command tokens as well. I'll message you offline about that.
Oh, please do. I'd be very interested to hear.
As we sort of develop the ideas, we'll sort of get back to you. I mean, the one for the subordinate commanders seems to have worked fairly well, and I've had a few people message me about that. And I think that's perhaps the easiest way to balance it. But I know there are some other ideas being bounced around, which is always nice. It's the fact that there are multiple options. Which is always good.
Yeah. And another nice thing about the system is you can fiddle around with it. It's difficult to break. There are a few things. It's quite robust. You know, you can fiddle around with it without generally destroying it too much. So it's a good little sort of sandbox in the sense that you can try things out and see how they work. You can change one element of it without it having too much impact on other mechanics of the game. So it's adding a little bit in here and taking a little bit out there, cutting it and trimming it and polishing up various bits and pieces. So,
And let's be honest, we're not a gamer unless we mess with the set of rules, are we?
Exactly. I often wondered when chess first came out, how many house rules were developed straight away. That's like, but fiddling. The fiddling part of it, that is, playing around with rules. I've spent nearly all my wargaming life, with people that we just can't leave things alone. You have to change it. Whether it's a Star Trek space combat game, or it's a naval game, or it's an air combat game, or it's a game of cowboys. We fiddle and play around and change it, and we just love to, you like the game enough, you invest a bit of time into it, and I guess you just fit it to what you want. You can't drop that on other people, house rules, things like that. Other people have to agree that you play, you're coming up against. But if you've got a nice close-knit gaming group where you all sort of know what you like, then it's perfect. It's great. You just play around with it as much as you like, change what you like. As long as at the end of the day you've had a good time, you've enjoyed playing it, it's challenged you, it's inspired you, you've liked it, and it's a social thing as well. And that's one of the nice things about games is war games and things. It's a social thing, it gets people together, and you learn a lot as well. I'm sort of like I'm a bit of a military historian as well, and I have learned just so much from researching on games and doing things and reading articles, listening to other people. I've learned so much myself, things that I never even, I just had no idea about at all. And that's another gratifying thing. Somebody's always got a fact to tell you. You learn a little something every day, and
always little bits of trivia are out there that sometimes just make.
Yeah, and if you could just, with 3D printers behind me, well, across here is all my board games. Across here is all my bookshelves and stuff like that. And there is just so much. If and when I pop my clogs, what my wife is going to do with all this stuff, I do not know. It's just ridiculous. But I just can't stop collecting books. It's always something interesting to read and look at. But,
so, as someone who's trained as a librarian, I like that attitude.
Oh yeah, and they have to be sorted. Like you'll get it. They've got to be sorted in a certain way. Some size. I mean, there is just so much. I don't like Team Yankee all that much. There's every single Team Yankee book there. Battle group, every single battle group. Dust Warfare, all the Osprey stuff, Gaslands, Donald Feathers, old stuff, sea battles in miniature, air battles in miniature, Mike Spick. God knows how many naval war games books. Bloody John Curry and all these reprints that they've done of some of the older war games books. Brilliant. Fred James stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I love all this stuff. Because
Yeah.
when it comes down to it, yeah.
Yeah, no, this sounds familiar. I mean, the Jane's stuff. I one of the highlights of my book buying career was when I found a copy of Jane's Infantry Weapons for, I think it was 1979 to 1980 for £10 in a bookshop. And this was sort of mid 80s when I was doing a lot of the gaming Twilight 2000. It was perfect.
I know. When you find some of this stuff, it's just amazing. And of course, eBay makes it even worse now, because I'll just go on there and I'll see this stuff. Scary thing is when you end up buying books that you sold about 10 years ago, you think, I don't need that book anymore, and then immediately you sold it, you're thinking that was a bad idea, and then 10 years later you go and rebuy the damn thing again.
Well, one of my pleasures at the minute is I'm picking up Kindle editions of all the Donald Featherstone books I used to borrow from all the libraries as a kid. No, I mean, as I say, it's all the reprints that have all the reprints that have started to come up now. So the naval games, and of course the tank battles in miniature books and things like that. Yeah.
It's great. And the other thing which is quite fun is they're producing a lot more of these. Books that are based on, college, military college stuff.
Yeah.
Some of the Paddy Griffiths, Canadian tactical training. I mean, some of the games are a bit weird, but I think what's the latest one? I think is, oh God, was the one that Paddy Griffiths, when he did that massive Sea Lion game back in about 20 years ago, things like that. He's brought that, obviously poor man, he's no longer with us, but I remember that ever so well. I mean, they've just published the book now with all his notes and everything on that Sea Lion thing, and that's, to me, those sort of big games, being part of something like that would be amazing. There's a friend of mine, Andy Callan, I think, and he actually took part in that. And I remember him just saying, "Oh yeah, what we do? Oh well, we were playing the German Air Force." I said, "You were playing the Luftwaffe." I said, "Oh great." He says, "Yeah." And guess who's sitting next to me? I said, "Who's that?" "Oh, Adolf Galland." Just incredible. Yeah, I'm just rediscovering a lot of the old stuff again. And just realizing how innovative and how good some of that stuff is.
Yeah, and how much it's influenced me, I know, over the years.
Yeah. You don't realize actually when you write something down and you think about something, and then you read one of these books and you think, oh, yeah, maybe that's where that came from. But yeah, I mean, it'll be the same with you. How many hundreds of different sets of rules have you played in your time? Just so many. Yeah.
Probably only a fraction of the number I've bought, I think, is the scary answer.
Yeah. No, that's right. They're not there to be played. They're there to be put on a bookshelf and looked at.
They're there for ideas half the time. Yeah. I've got to be honest. I have actually bought rules just to go, oh, what can I mine from that? Yeah.
Well, imitation is a sincerest form of flattery. And to tell you the truth, and a lot of game designers are exactly the same thing. People I talk to is that, you cherry pick. You just cherry pick. You go through your favorite rules. Those things that you like the best, that made the game most enjoyable to you. Just cherry pick those things, and I don't think any designer is ever going to be like, oh God, look, someone's nicked that off me, or that's terrible. Imitation's sincerest form of flattery, probably. So, I mean, if somebody's written something that's good, it's maybe not in the game system that you want, or it doesn't fit where you want it to be, well, lift it and shift it and play it there. That's the way. None of us, no design. And there's very few. I mean, like me, I've got a proper full-time day job that takes up all time. So, as my wife refers to this, it's my hobby job. It's that, and probably the amount of money I've spent on research and the amount of money I bought on buying games for research purposes. Oh yes, games and books for research purposes, you know, would far outweigh any monetary reward you might get actually producing any of this stuff. I mean, God knows how many campaign books and stuff I bought just doing the bolt action things. I mean, it was just ridiculous. You know, I look back at these sort of the Amazon bill. You know, Amazon. I looked back at the Amazon and saw how much I'd actually spent on these things. It was just ridiculous. Yeah.
Don't give my other half ideas.
Exactly. Well, I can get by just sort of saying, well, if I want this, what do you want? So it's a question of a sort of like a subtle bribery of saying, well, you know, that thing that you want to, you know, my wife's into a lot of craft type stuff. So, you know, oh, you know, I'm looking up at a new 3D printer or something, and oh, didn't you want that loom thing? You know, that cost about the same price. Yeah. So that's one of the best ways of doing it, I think. But the only thing I've definitely learned is do not take it to a war game show. Do not take it to ever again. If life is worth living, do not do that.
I've done it a few times, but usually it's a case of go to one of the bookstores, buy a book that interests her, park her with the coffee.
Yeah. It just yeah.
How she puts up with all these videos that I'm doing at the minute, I've no idea.
Yeah, well, it's good. It keeps you occupied. It keeps him occupied. You know. That's it. You know.
Yeah, I do know that feeling. Anyway, back to a couple of other questions. We got a bit sidetracked there, but I like it when that happens. No, it's great. I like it when it happens. I was very interested when you said you actually role played Twilight 2000.
Yeah. Well, big Frank Chadwick fan.
Yeah.
Game designers, GDW. I got so much of their stuff. And of course, it was all very, you know, because and GDW were at their height during the Cold War. So, you know, there were things like Harpoon and Air Superiority and I say Twilight and their original Team Yankee and stuff like that. So, yeah, fascinated by Twilight 2000 because, you know, we were role playing, but it was also role playing in a particular subject that was sort of like, you know, close to us. I mean, again, when we were playing it, you know, we were still in the Cold War period. It was still a dangerous time. What was in Twilight 2000 wasn't, you know, could have happened. I mean, yeah, we'd probably all be dead, you know. Britain would probably be under glass, but no, yeah, I liked it, and you know, the various vehicle books and things came out. There was a couple of the games came out. I mean, I know there was a few things that were weird. I remember our APC receiving a hit and the shell going straight through and doing nothing because it followed the rules of penetration play and things like that. But no, yeah, played the campaign, played quite a few of the scenario books, the Warsaw ones. Yeah, you know, it was good. It's the thing you did back then.
Yeah. And I always like to mention it because I've got quite a few viewers of the channel who are quite into Twilight 2000, particularly with the new 4th edition coming out. Are you aware about that one?
I've been aware of. I mean, I know there was one that there's Twilight 2000, then there was like that Mercenary 2000, and then something. I know there was something that we're going to do that was going to be based upon like an asteroid impact or something like that, or something that had a natural disaster rather than having the Third World War. It was going to be a you know, sort of comet fragments or something like that. But no, is the 4th edition something like that, or is it back to
4th edition's gone back to the classic Cold War?
Oh, great, yeah.
There's a couple of videos on the channel actually looking at the background, you know, if you want to see what's happened. But basically, what you have is the coup in Moscow in 1990 succeeds, which, to be perfectly honest, is far more likely than what happened in real life, because the KGB Alpha Group were given the orders to storm Parliament, and the commander resigned on the spot. They turned to the second in command, and he resigned on the spot. at which point the rest of the coup wouldn't succeed, which is absolutely unbelievable from a historical perspective. So they sort of use that as the turning point in history. Slightly different this time is Poland is now part of NATO. And there's a bit more involvement of Sweden as well, because the Free League were publishing it in Sweden. They've actually done two packs for it. You've got a Swedish background and a Polish background.
Right.
It does look very good. The system is quite nice. I quite like the system. There's been a lot of debate on the background, which, and I think it's the typical gamer thing of people love the history of Twilight 2000. And I think it's sort of, it's changed. And I think some people were a little bit, it's changed. But it does look really good. I've actually got a playtest credit, which I'm quite proud of for that one.
Nice. Excellent.
Yeah. So that's due out. The Kickstarter's finished, and the physical games are out from about September. So
I'll definitely keep an eye out for that, because, as I say, you can't see it here. About 15 Twilight 2000 supplements, Pirates of the Vistula and all that, Warlords of the Ozarks and all that sort of stuff.
Do you know? I think I see a campaign coming on here with us being fairly local to each other.
Yeah, I don't see why not. I don't see why not. Yeah. I mean, I used to love love some of the slightly futuristic designs in the unmanned turret tanks and stuff like that. And some of this stuff is, look at the Armata and things like that, and you're sort of saying, they were quite close to it.
But I have actually modified a Battlefront M1 to the M1A2 Giraffe. I've actually done that. And of course, I bought the Battlefront Lab 75 set, as I keep calling it, the RDF light tank. I am now the proud owner of more than were built in real life, having just bought one box.
Yes. It was a good looking thing. I mean, it looked like you ought to take the tracks off and put anti-grav units on it.
It did have that look.
Yeah, like the Sheridan. I don't know how many Sheridans I built without tracks and turned them into.
I've got a soft spot for the Sheridan. That was why I said, can we have the tank missile card for the US in 7 days?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's just the horror stories you read about the Shillelagh and the problems with the 152. But I mean, it was we didn't know about that at the time. So we used to play with those. We had starships, M60 A3s or whatever, A2s and whatever. But no, I'll be looking at Twilight 2000 again for certain. It's Twilight 2000. 22 years ago or 21 years ago.
Let's not realise that the Cold War actually ended more years ago than it lasted.
I know. It's an incredible thing. I have to say, I miss the Cold War. But mostly because of air shows. Air shows were brilliant. The air shows were brilliant in the Cold War. The big American air shows, lots of competition for, burgers and beer and soda. And American shows used to be great. And I don't know, the world sort of had a, I was 4 minutes. We were always 4 minutes away from nuclear annihilation potentially, and it could easily have happened. But I don't know. I think it was a more certainty. There was I don't know.
I think there was more stability because people realised that. Whereas now a lot of the threats are, as you say, asymmetric, which doesn't make it safer, if that makes sense.
No, it does. No, you're right. Yeah, I agree with you. There was a certain, mutually assured destruction was a terrifying concept, for sure. And it began to break down a bit with intermediate range weaponry, and then people starting to get the idea that can we win a nuclear war, and the fear that put into the Soviets. but there was, before then, it was just sort of like, yes, there was millions and millions of people living in, you know, repressive regimes and stuff. But I've got many friends in Eastern Europe because, you know, working for IBM, you know, when globalization came along, you know, every country sort of, you know, there was IBM Slovakia, IBM, you know, Ukraine, etc. And it's amazing when you listen to them talking about their parents talking now about, as repressive as it was, you know, in a way, there's a nostalgia for it still now when they see, you know, certain things that are happening. So it's probably unhealthy to talk in those terms, I suppose. But I guess when you grew up in it, I just have this affinity for the 80s. The 80s were, to me, the 80s were the best. I loved the 80s for whatever reason. Music, air shows, and I guess. But yeah. But certainly things like 7 Days and you know, certainly getting involved in that, you know, brought back all those memories of playing Twilight 2000, playing Combined Arms, playing, you know, all those sort of all those sort of games. So it was nice. It was nice to get back there, and I've been pleased the way that Cold War gaming as such has come back into vogue again. It's as a historical thing rather than it being like. I'm talking too much, but like, yes, the old SPI games that you used to get, and it used to get something like Mech War. The time is January 1987. You'd be going, oh God, you know, that's like 20 years, 10, 15 years in the future. You know, now those things that were there, it's historical. It's all historical stuff. The things that we saw as the leading edge is just obsolete now. It's just not.
Yeah. Would you remember when it used to be called Ultra Moderns?
Yeah, absolutely. I've had many sort of things that have sort of like. I remember going to Farnborough in 1990 when we've collapsed the Soviet Union, and you get things like backfire bombers, and there was a backfire bomber came to Farnborough, and I was just looking at this thing, just thinking, you know, in the past I would have seen that as some sort of blurred picture, as like all the Russian aircraft used to be in blurred pictures.
Yeah.
You got closer and just the rivets and bits and pieces, and then a few years ago when I was living in Portsmouth, a couple of times Russian missile destroyer would turn up, and you get on, you know, and you used to look at the beautiful sort of, they used to look so great, those Russian ships. And it was a right rust bucket when I got on it, you know, there's flaking paint and rust and stuff. I was like, oh, destroyed many illusions, but it was nice. It's nice. It was just nice to be able to, you know, to walk around those sort of things and think, you know, so many years ago, you know, you saw them as they were the enemy. They were. But yeah, God, I'm sorry. I've more questions.
This is why. Let's be honest. People will be tuning in to watch the video to listen to you, not me. They can just listen to me on other ones.
Oh dear.
But yeah, no, I've got to be honest. I think this is what actually attracted me to 7 Days to the River Rhine is the Twilight 2000 side of it, because something like Team Yankee doesn't work for Twilight 2000 because you don't have full platoons. Yeah, you might have one vehicle left of a company, and I know when it was being discussed on one of the Twilight 2000 Facebook groups, someone said, "Oh, use Team Yankee to fight the larger battles." I have to be honest, I recommended 7 Days.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah,
because it is absolutely perfect for Twilight 2000. It needs a couple of slight tweaks, particularly for the infantry, because in Twilight 2000 you need different quality infantry. Yeah. Because you might have 4 Boy Scouts with bolt-action rifles, as opposed to a fire team with a grenade launcher and a machine gun. You know, so you need that, but that's all it needs to tweak it.
Well, you know, there's also what we've been thinking of as well is that the chip pull system and the way it works. You know, at some point in time, you've got to look and say, well, supposing we drop the scale amazingly, and you take it down to sort of like individuals or fire teams or something like that, and use the same sort of mechanics for it. And thinking, there could be, you know, some leeway. There could be some ground there, some depth to that. So, you know, where you focus very much is on the infantry, but you know, at a smaller scale. I don't know, but we've been mooting that thought, that idea. You know, because it almost does get down to almost. And I think I find it when you play 7 days as well, because when you see units, you know, suddenly get covered in morale markers and command tokens and things like that, you know, you almost get, it almost becomes a bit role play. You know, I want that unit has suffered so badly. I want to get that one back. I don't want it to go. So, yeah, I think you're probably right. It would be, it would actually be quite nice using 7 days to sort of game out a few of those. You know, when you got, you know, at the end of your role play session, when you got one of those nice sort of set piece battle type bits, and you know, you can represent your characters on the battlefield. You know, and you can probably do that with, you know, use of command points and things like that. You can probably use 7 days for that. Yeah.
As somebody who's actually painted up one of the Peter Pig AK-47 range leaders as the Black Baron, that's brought back a memory, hasn't it?
It certainly has. Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, I think we may be gaming some of those out as well. I can see this happening.
Yeah, I don't see why not. No, I mean, you know, come when we get back to a level of normality, I shall make an effort. So, you know, you either come over in this direction, come to our club, and when we're playing, or I come across and visit across to your side, things like that. Your side, yeah, that's yours, yeah.
Come over
you know
to
what I mean?
the dark side.
Yeah, the dark side.
We have cookies.
I know. But yeah, no, for certain we should do that, because it's what it is. This is what wargaming in a lot of respects is about. It's about being social. It's about getting to meet people, like people. Good conversation. Just a good time. Have a good time with people.
Yeah. No, I fully agree with that. I'm just looking at my list of questions. There's just a couple I've got left for you.
Sure.
Because I appreciate we actually said we'd probably go for about an hour. We're coming up to about an hour and a half. So
well, I've been enjoying it.
It's the way it goes.
It's been enjoyable.
Yeah. Now, this was a question that sort of came out of our discussions as sort of in the Like a Stonewall group. What size games do you actually envision 7 days the River Rhine being for? You know, because gamers are the classic. Let's chuck everything on the table.
Well.
Notice I'm not saying how many points.
No. I mean, generally it depends upon who's going to be there and whether we can book more tables. I mean, we generally play probably on an area of about 7 foot by 4 foot, probably. Sometimes if we're allowed to get the center tables or whatever, we can play a much bigger game. But in general, we sort of play on that size, and maybe on the Soviet side, maybe something like maximum 20 tanks, X number of infantry fighting vehicles, infantry. So yeah, so that sort of size. But we have played a couple of games where everybody's brought a lot of their stuff along. We've had big battles, with maybe 60 tanks on one side. But because of the chip pull system, that can take quite a long time. So it has to be a long session. But generally, the majority of the games that I've had, and when I've gone to other clubs down south and things like that and demoing, it's generally been like on a 6 foot by 4 foot table, probably with about 15 to 20 Soviet tanks, maybe 8 or so decent NATO type things when I've been demoing it. So that's the size we play on. We generally don't often get the chance to play on big tables, so we just play the smaller scale games. So 6 foot by 4 foot usually, something like that.
Yeah.
Lot of terrain, plenty of terrain though.
Yeah, that's something you need. It's interesting actually. You can scale it up that, because I find it scales down nicely. I play a lot on a 3 by 2 table.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And you can easily put on possibly even a couple of platoons of infantry on there quite easily. And it plays as a really fast, fun game.
Yeah, I know. I agree. It does work that way, because I've always envisioned that in some respects 7 days sort of represents the engagement. You know, because historically, again, and I guess a lot of this was down to using micro tanks and the extreme ranges that were on paper, you know, tanks were capable of hitting each other at. So many of the games we played on sort of, you know, billiard table type surfaces, you know, small tray, and you've been, you know, oh, I'm picking you off at 3,000 meters and God knows what else. And to me, there wasn't a great deal of fun in that. So I always envision that 7 days is sort of after that part. In some respects, it's when it's the last bit of the battles almost, where, you know, they're actually getting into, you know, into close combat as much as anything. It isn't, but it is a sort of skirmish game in some respects, is the way I see it. You know, the fact that the range is sort of, except for a couple of weapon systems, the range is, you know, you can hit anything sort of on the table, especially with the infantry or whatever. It's like, I always imagine it being sort of the end of the battle in some respects, the bit when they really getting close with each other, and it's the decisive part. I never had much fun in playing in the big games that, you know, where it was just basically a turkey shoot. I like it in this one that if you use the terrain correctly, you know, even the worst units can get themselves into positions where they can potentially do damage to, you know, to the super vehicles. So it's that sort of skirmishy bit at the end of the battle when the forces really get into really close combat.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense, actually. It's quite interesting. Like I said, we've gone massive and we've also gone small, and the rules still work both ways. It's just the time you have available.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to do a proper, you know, Veil of Tears type, you know, Syrian front type thing. And I see that played with, you know, I've seen people play in versions of Battlefront with that, and other game systems, and it works and looks, and I guess it would work with 7 days as well. It's just a question of getting enough T62s on the table, enough T55. So
yeah, with 3D printers, that unfortunately becomes way too easy, doesn't it?
Yeah, more various T64s coming out now. I love the one thing I always hated about the not hated, but one thing I disliked about the Battlefront stuff was the lack of the one thing that sort of made, you know, that I think was the classic look of sort of late 80s Soviet vehicles, you know, the reactive armor and the various and all those elements, which just isn't there. And to me, a Soviet tank looks naked without its reactive armor. Definitely printing lots of that sort of stuff off. So that's probably that's the biggest thing I'm into at the moment is printing. And I guess this is one of the things of COVID, is that, you know, you're being forced to sort of like look at other things, you know, things what you potentially have to do on your own. And I always admired 3D resin printing from a distance, and then I got persuaded to buy some, and I haven't looked back since.
No, I'm very similar. I've got to be honest, my 20mm British Force for the late 80s, that was virtually entirely 3D printed. I had the infantry, which was 2 boxes of Rebel infantry.
Yeah.
And I then sat and looked in the box, and I've got the box is, I've got the better part of a battalion here, or battle group anyway, because it's mixed armor and infantry. That was frightening to realise how much of it there was.
Oh God, I know. And there's so much you can do. I mean, I'm sort of very much into I love modern aircraft and stuff. And I have been printing loads.
That's a lovely F4 Phantom.
I know, but all the stalls on it, the sidewinders and the sparrows and God knows what else. And I think the STL costs me £1.50 or something, and I can produce these damn things as I want to. So yeah, so it's really enjoying the 3D printing, and I think it's an untapped. Well, it's getting tapped now, but I imagine what I could have, if I imagine what I could have done with 3D printing, 10 years ago or something like that, when you were, because you can just about do anything you like now. And I love kit bashing as well. We get somebody's produces a model, and if you learn to play around with it in a decent 3D modeling program, you can take bits off, add bits to it, you can kit bash it. I've been kit bashing, people have been aircraft without missiles on, and I found somebody else who does missiles and a different scale. So I've scaled the missiles down, separated them out, built some pylons and put them, and done it all virtual, and then print the damn thing out. It's brilliant. It's just like, it's like magic. It's like Star Trek.
That's funny. That's the comparison I always make as well.
Yeah. No, I think about it when I get my mobile phone out,
add in the Alexa as well, and it's scary, isn't it?
It certainly is. It certainly is. Right, I can hear movement from downstairs. So if you've got any more questions,
I was going to say, actually, we've got through all the questions, I think. The only thing I would like to add is, there's two parts. First of all, thank you for coming on being interviewed. It's been fascinating chatting to you. It's one of those interviews I'm not going to need to really edit at all. I'm just going to use as is pretty much. But the other thing I want to do is put a public thank you in. And apologies for getting him meowing at the minute, because Cubit the cat is trying to get in. He wants to be a bit of a YouTube star. He turns up on a lot of my videos.
The cat should always get preeminence. You're just incidental. The cat owns the house. You know that. Yeah. It's just
Well, I don't know if you've watched the Tank Museum videos during lockdown where they actually had Finn the dog.
Yeah.
I think Cubit watched too many of them and wants to be a YouTube star. But I always remember the Terry Pratchett line with this, which was, cats were worshipped as gods in ancient Egypt. They have never forgotten this.
Absolutely right.
I've even managed to get Terry Pratchett in now. We're going through just about everything that makes some sort of all the things I'm interested in. But no, the big thing I want to thank you for, Roger, is for basically letting me muck around with your rules. The number of things I know that I've sort of put on there, the army lists, suggestions, medical rules, medical units, things like that. It's the fact you haven't shot me down in flames and gone, "I leave my rules alone." I want to publicly thank you for that.
No, you don't need to do that, because the thing about it is that it's clear from yours and many other people's is that you've thought about what you're doing. You've got an enthusiasm for the game, which is great, which makes me feel better, which is nice, and you've taken the time to think about it, and you've taken the time to want to see if you can make it better, and make it a more enjoyable experience, because that's all I want in the end, is just people to enjoy playing the game. And if by changing some things that makes that enjoyment more, then that is brilliant. And it's even better if that's then gets shared out. And it's like all things, some people say, "Oh yeah, that's a great idea," and other people are not too keen on that, perhaps, or things like that. But that doesn't matter, because when it all balances out, what you do, what the others do, is just attempting to enhance your enjoyment of the game. And however you do it, if you're enjoying the game, then that's great. Then I'm happy, because that's the best thing you can do. If you're going to produce a war game, something that people play. If they, there could be nothing better than the fact is if they're enjoying it, and that's the simplest way I look at it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. But not every rule writer thinks like that. So I think having that attitude has encouraged me to do more and more with it, including sort of some of the more weird stuff like the Insurgent list, which had for those who haven't read it, it's actually got Airwolf and Rambo sat in it.
Of course, Airwolf, perfect. Just make excellent.
You're going to go and print off an STL of one now, aren't you, just to put it on the table?
Well, I used to love Airwolf. I used to love Airwolf and Blue Thunder. It was something, yeah. Nothing,
Just need to
nothing.
work out a force to put Blue Thunder in. Maybe I ought to do a list of all fictional units.
Yeah, I think so. Red Dawn. But yeah, no, that was.
You're going to yell Wolverines in a minute, aren't you?
I love that film.
Yeah, but again, that's something that is quite gameable with 7 Days to the River Rhine.
Yeah.
Probably on that lower level that you were saying. I think that might be quite an interesting experience. That
we did. We've done it. We've played a few of what I call Red Christmas, which is sort of like it's a point where sort of like sort of simulate on the point where the Thatcher government fell and there's the Americans, due to in their little background, there's a terrible, well, actually the Russians engineer a terrible chemical weapons accident, and the Americans are requested to leave West Germany, and there's this whole thing, and it then ends up with Russian forces being invited into the UK, and we end up with a sort of living on the front line type thing where we tank battles outside Ipswich. Yeah.
Do you know, that sounds remarkably like the Fourth Protocol if it had succeeded.
Yeah, well, I mean that's the point. I mean, we I think it's always been I think it's always a fascinating thing that I mean the sort of very British Civil War type things, the pre-war stuff that's been a very popular genre, and then sort of moving it on further, sort of that Civil War, some form of Civil War in Britain in the 80s, 1980, winter of '89 aspects of things. Yeah, we've done that. Saladin's out there, and and people getting stuff out of the tank museum and all sorts of bits and pieces. Yeah.
Oh, that could be interesting.
Yeah.
Stuff they've got down there.
Yeah. What if? That's me. What if?
Well, it's been.
I'm going to have to go soon now, but it's been a real pleasure.
It has. Yeah, I've thoroughly enjoyed it, Roger. Thank you for taking so much time to come across, have a chat. Let's just hope the viewers like it. If they do, let us know, and let us know if there's anything else they'd like us to chat about.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's perfect. I can talk the hind leg of the donkey.
No, you've been absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much for that.
It's a pleasure. See you, mate.
Bye.